Oh, welcome into the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. You figure that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. Welcome in to one of maybe even the last show of 2025. Can you believe it? I always joke that like when Halloween hits, the year is pretty much over. When Thanksgiving hits, it means that New Year's is right around the corner. You're pretty much going to skip right past Christmas, and now the Christmas is over. Well, you know, we're right up against it. We're 2 days away from New Year's Eve. We are 1 day away from New Year's Day, when we all get to make the joke on your calls or at work. I'll see you next year. We're so close. We are unbelievably close. And I realize that I'm so out of my normal set of things to do. I haven't worked out in a few days, which doesn't feel great. My hair is poofy. My mustache is very long and also poofy. Then I realized it looks like a small mammal just crawled under my upper lip and died. So you can tell we're out of sorts around here. Schools reopen next week. Not saying that I am very much looking forward to getting everybody back out of the house, but I might be looking at least 5% forward to getting everybody out of the house. But we have a lot to get into because the Eagles persevered. They walked away with a very rare win in Buffalo, a place where teams just simply do not go and beat the Bills. The Eagles did, but of course the Eagles did it in the way that they always do, which is in a way that makes us want to throw ourselves out of a collective window. So we're going to break that all down. Nick Sirianni sounded off after the game, and A.J. Brown gave him a little bit of a look, and we'll dissect that as well on the show. And we'll talk about the fact that the Eagles offense pretty much did nothing of value in the second half and why it's okay to point that out, despite what some dolts over on Twitter would otherwise suggest. And as if things couldn't get more fun. I know that the Sixers played, but I didn't get to watch a Sixers game, so we're not diving into the Sunday Sixers. We're just not doing it. We are not going to dive into, on today's show, the 0-4, whatever it is, that the Sixers have been this season with Embiid, Maxey, and Paul George all in the lineup. We're not going to go there today. We might do it on Wednesday. We might do it on Friday. I don't know, but it won't be today. But we are going to get to, at the end of the show, some interesting notes about Christian Dvorak, because there was speculation going on over the last few days that the Flyers in Dvorak's camp are currently discussing a potential extension to his contract, that they might want to keep Christian Dvorak in town, which of course sent social media into a frenzy about Christian Dvorak got another third line, fourth line center. That's just do we need elite centers around here? We're going to talk about all that because once again, I think people have lost their minds about things that don't really matter, but we will get there. But before we do, we're going to go out to the comments section. I'm going to pop it up on the bottom right of the corner of the screen. And if you're new to the show, welcome in. Thank you for finding us here before the end of 2025. We're looking forward to an even bigger, more successful 2026. I think either today or maybe Wednesday's show. I know Wednesday is New Year's Eve, but I think we're still going to rock and roll with a show of some sort on Wednesday. We'll kind of do like a look back, because the show, despite the fact that, you might look at it and say, well, that's not 50,000 subscribers. Is it really worth it? I think we're now successfully over 1,800. And I'm pretty sure year over year, that means that we're up 1,300 subscribers since this time last year, which is, well, on one hand, you could say, well, shouldn't you be doing better than that, Russ? And maybe, I don't know. And then on the other hand, you go, hey, you know what? That's actually pretty decent growth year over year. And if you kind of like do the whole tripling of the audience, well, next year could be like a pretty successful one, go over 5,000. Like, we'll see. We're going to get to all of that. But I do want to get out to the comments, because the comments are the lifeblood of the show. Yes, the preparation and everything that goes into this is certainly a big element of it, but it is ultimately the people who find this show, despite the fact that there's not a set time and we just do it every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whenever we're moved by the Spirit. These people still find their way to the show. Are they unemployed? I don't know. I don't think so. I think all these people are actually employed, but if they're not, I'm glad that we could bring a little bit of joy to their day. All right, let's get out to it. I might actually also involve my wife on today's show, because she put something out on TikTok that I think needs to get a little bit of attention as well. We have to have a conversation here as a comment section on YouTube, Facebook, and X about how many knives it really takes to make a PB&J. We might get there a little bit later on, but in the meantime, out to the comments. Andrew Fawcett is here from Texas, says, Russ! Hello, Fawcett. I hope you're doing well. Nick Abe says, yo, stud. Stop. You're just saying that because it's true. Hello. B Condor 1 says, we're back. I know, it's been a week. Isn't it weird? The last time we did the show was last Monday. It was the 22nd. And I felt kind of weird. And I went to go set everything up. And I was like, I think I remember how to do this. So great stuff. Jay Grabby's here, says, Russettes, afternoon. Hello, Jay. And to the Russettes out there. Nick Abe says Matvey Mishkov needs to be the GOAT. Well, we maybe talk about that. Jake Rebbe says Devo extension reports eerily similar to Walker ones from a couple of years ago. We can talk about that as well. I love Fawcett. New year, new me. We're not quite at New Year, new me yet. Like, we're getting close. We're getting really close to that point in the year. But yeah. Also says absolutely no right to win the game last night. We'll talk about that. Brian Knowlton says, hey, Russ, happy Monday. Bummer of a game last night. They had everything but the finish, which made it super frustrating. Obviously, talking about the Flyers and not about the Eagles. The Eagles did manage to finish the one off, although I would say it was under somewhat controversial circumstances. We will talk about it because it's important to do so. We try to be fair and balanced here on the show. You could decide if you think it is or not. Greg Bondarenko is here. Says, good afternoon, all. Good afternoon, Greg. Amadeo, just like my kids at some different point throughout the winter break, says, here's to being sick. Feels like everybody's sick. People that I work with from other states are currently sick. I think there's just an illness going around. What is the illness? Who knows? Who knows? We'll find out. I do see some more stuff in here about the Dvorak stuff, so we'll try to get there as well, including something about Konechny's comments about Dvorak on the TNT postgame show last week. I don't have that one immediately available. I can look for it, though. We'll come back around. Nick Abe says, I heard the Flyers are making a trade for Ryan Hartman. Multiple sources have reported talks have gotten more interested. I don't know if that's true, though. We'll see. Alex Smith says, hey, Russ, quick question. How do you watch this team and say they should not go for a top draft pick? They are missing high-end talent. Talking about the Flyers. All right, fine. We'll get to the Flyers. Let me get to the Eagles first, then we'll get to the Flyers. Fawcett, by the way, who sent beaver nuggets and chocolate-coated beaver nuggets to the Joys. They were very well received. I think the chocolate ones are amazing. I think they're fantastic. The chocolate ones especially are really, really good. B. Condor is employed, says one computer monitor for work, one monitor for the greatest podcast east of the Mississippi. Thank you. Thank you. Bondarenko says, looking forward to being at the Snow the Goalie show at Parks Casino tomorrow night. That's right. Because as we put out on Twitter, we are doing a special show this week because of New Year's Eve. We are going to be doing Snow the Goalie Radio at Parks Casino in Bensalem, Pennsylvania on Tuesday night instead of Wednesday. Tuesday night at 6 o'clock. So if you missed that announcement, we did put it out over on Twitter, Facebook, I think on Instagram as well. I mean, I say we, it was me, but I'm mostly sure that I put it everywhere that it needed to be. But in case you missed it, Tuesday, 6 o'clock, Parks Casino. Be there. Come talk some puck with me, Ant and Bundy. It's the last chance to do so in the calendar year 2025. It's going to be a blast. We're going to be, if you haven't been to the Chickies and Pete's at Parks Casino, you go all the way. I don't actually, there's like 2 or 3 entrances, but like the entrance that I came in, which I thought was the main entrance, I'm pretty sure it is. You go through the casino floor to the right. It's all the way in the back right corner. There's a Chickies and Pete's. If you go all the way to the back left corner, for perspective, that's where the sports book is. We're in the back right corner, give or take. So that's where the Chickies and Pete's is. Come on out, have some crab fries, get some mussels and red sauce, or in the white wine and garlic sauce. You can come out and get the Bundy, the bowl of clam chowder to go with a full pizza and 12 shrimp. I've now added on the 12 shrimp myself. So I do 12 shrimp and a grilled chicken sandwich and some crab fries. You just come on out, have a little bit of fun, talk some puck. We're going to have a blast. So yeah, that's on Tuesday. We're going to start trying to put out the schedule ahead of time. Part of the reason that we haven't been putting out the schedule like weeks in advance is because there have been some changes made like up until like 2 days before the show. So we're hoping that the schedule going forward is pretty locked in. And once we have it for sure, we'll probably put something out on Instagram and Facebook and X to kind of give you the rundown of like, here are the next 3 or 4 weeks on Snow the Goalie Radio. So people are aware of where we're going, but that's kind of where we're at right now. Nick Abe is also right, by the way. Hit the like button. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, let's go to the Eagles, and then we'll come back around to the Fly Guys. We will go to the Fly Guys in a bit, but let's start with the Eagles. So I want everybody to just kind of go back to the mental headspace going into Sunday's game. And I want you to think back to what did you want to see out of the Eagles to make you feel like they are better positioned, better poised, better prepared, more ready for the hard-hitting, tough opposition they're going to run into in the playoffs. Because we knew that last week against the Commanders, it is what it is. The Commanders were without Jim Daniels. They also just weren't a very good team. They had no shot at the playoffs. And so, yeah, you have a bunch of guys who are maybe desperate to try to win a job for next year, put film out there to try to get a job, get employment for next year, maybe even put together something good to remain with the Commanders. But when the Eagles entered Sunday's game against the Bills, it was different, right? The Bills were still trying to compete for the AFC East crown. The Eagles still had a shot, right, to get the number 2 seed. And by the way, that remains in play. The Eagles win and the 49ers win against the Bears on Sunday Night Football means the Eagles can lock in that number 2 seed with a win and a Bears loss next week. So the number 2 seed is still in play, and the Eagles luckily are going to play that same nasty, not very good Commanders team. Although remember, Dan Quinn said, well, we're going to play them in 2 weeks, so I guess we'll see. We'll put that aside. Eagles still have something to play for in week 18. But going into week 17, we all kind of had this idea in our heads that, like, you could theoretically be seeing a potential Super Bowl matchup, right? I mean, I know that there have been a lot of times that we've sat back and we've been very frustrated with this Eagles team. And there were certainly, God knows, plenty of times on Sunday where I was as frustrated or even more than normal in how the Eagles were performing. But we're going to kind of set that aside as well. So you knew that there was a chance you were going to be seeing what could amount to being a Super Bowl preview on Sunday. So going into the game, like, my big points, and we didn't talk about this last week because we did one show because it was Christmas week, and, no offense, but family comes first that week. My big thing was, can we get some more consistency out of the offense? Can we walk away, the day or two after the game with all of the really smart people who do the all 22 film breakdowns who say, hey, there are more positive signs. The Eagles are running more under center play action passes where they were averaging, I think it was roughly 10 yards more per pass than they were out of shotgun, where they were executing at a higher level in the running game, yada, yada, yada. Were we going to see a better array of route concepts? Were we going to see different formations being run? Were we going to see a wider, seemingly a wider influence beyond just Kevin Patullo, maybe beyond Nick Sirianni? Are we going to see some more concepts brought in by the QB coach, right? Are we going to see more things that kind of make you feel like, all right, when you get to the playoffs, this Eagles team is going to have like another page of the playbook, or maybe an entirely new section of the playbook they're going to be able to tap into, have some confidence, and put things out there that they haven't had on film all regular season. I wanted to see that. I also wanted to see if the defense was going to be able to rise to the occasion. They've been fantastic all season. They've had a couple of moments where late in games when the offense really sputters, the defense doesn't get much of a break on the sideline, and I think they're kind of gassed at the end of games. And that's really not any fault of their own. That really does come down to the Eagles' offense's inability to put meaningful drives together late in games. I wanted to see if the defense could stop Josh Allen and this Buffalo Bills offense, or at the very least slow it down a bit. And I wanted to see if special teams is going to bounce back. I didn't expect like a big game out of Britton Covey, but I really was concerned with, can Jake Elliott find his form? Can he regain that confidence and be that kicker that has been pretty damn reliable for years, including 2 Super Bowls? Could that guy come back out? Could that guy come back to the forefront? Could we get that guy again? So I put all those things together, and those were my keys to the game. Those are things that I wanted to see. And so here's a positive, right? I come away from Sunday's game feeling as good or better about the defense than I did going in. And that was even knowing that like Nakobe Dean was going to be out, which you obviously know, not ideal. I think we expected Nakobe Dean to be back in. We know that there's been really strong play from the linebackers this season. We know that Jahad Campbell had seen his snap count really strongly decrease over the last like 3-4 weeks. So Jahad Campbell had the opportunity to make some plays, and he did. He had a massive fumble recovery where he didn't give up on a play, and it was that argument, was it the tuck rule, where Josh Allen goes to throw the ball, and then I thought it looked like he saw a defensive player barreling down in on him, and so he went to tuck the ball, not to fumble it. Some people thought that that was a forward motion because he was trying to throw. I genuinely think that he was going to throw. Maybe it was a pump fake, and he was attempting to bring it into his body. Well, the ball goes the other way, 30 yards or so, and Jahad Campbell makes a really brilliant play, keeps with it, plays through the whistle, and then upon review, it's too close to make a change, and so the Eagles get possession. So you go, all right, cool. Jahad Campbell made a really cool play, made a really impactful play. So the defense on the whole for the entire day, like you had Jalen Phillips making big plays. You had Jalen Carter making massive plays as well. Jalen Carter, who's had procedures on both shoulders, oddly enough, interestingly enough. I don't know how that happens. I don't know how you get to a point where it's like, I need both shoulders worked on, but he did. He was back in there. He was a legitimate disruptor for the defense. I looked at this defense and went, yo, you held Buffalo in Buffalo to a meager 12 points. Now, I get it. There was an extra point that was blocked by that big old mitt of Jalen Carter, and I get it. You were a better throw by Josh Allen on a 2-point conversion away from losing this game. But all of that notwithstanding, I still sit back and go, yo, this Eagles defense held this very skilled, talented, stacked Buffalo Bills offense to a mere 12 points at home. And that should be the thing that gives you hope. So, like, before we get into the negative, which was the offense, before we get there, I want everyone to just acknowledge briefly, this defense is absolutely Super Bowl caliber. The secondary is strong. You have as good of a defensive back pairing right on the corners in DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. You have good safeties over the top. You have excellent linebackers, and you have a hell of a pass rush that just seems to be getting better every week. And it's also a defense that, when it puts its mind to it, can stuff the run pretty damn well. And a lot of that is Jordan Davis. And on the pass rush side of things, I mean, things look significantly different when you have Jalen Carter in there, who commands a double team. The Bills a couple of times seem to forget that you pretty much automatically need to double team Jalen Carter, and he almost ripped Josh Allen's head straight off his neck and his shoulders. So I look at this defense run by Vic Fangio, and I say, all right, did they make adjustments at halftime? Did they look pretty damn good down the stretch? And I would say, yeah, they did. I think that a lot of the things that people wanted to kind of go after the defense about late in the game is just that they were gassed. The offense did nothing of value to help in the second half. They didn't put together a sustained drive. We're going to get into the numbers here in a little bit about just how awful the Eagles offense was in the second half. But I would say that on the whole, even if you had lost that game 14-13, you know who I wouldn't be blaming today? The Eagles defense, because they were gassed. I wouldn't blame them. Because if you go to Buffalo and you hold the Bills to 14 points and you don't win the game, well, that's not a defensive problem. But as it stands, 12 points. So I'm watching games around the league, right? And this includes like the Bears game last night, Bears and 49ers. And I'm watching this game going, all right, like, yeah, San Francisco's got a really good offense. Yeah, Chicago all of a sudden has a really good offense, it appears, right? And you watch some of the other teams in this conference. You watch the Rams, you watch the Packers, right? And you start to say to yourself, like, all right, am I really quaking in my boots? Am I shaking in my boots? Am I baking a cake to eat my feelings in my boots? Like, no, I don't think you are, because this defense has figured out a way virtually every week to dominate the opposition. The times that the Eagles have gotten, you want to say run off the field, or that the Eagles defense hasn't gotten the job done, those games have been pretty few and far between. And so when I look at it, I go, all right, this season it feels like offenses across the league are largely up, and yet the Eagles have a defense that largely holds the opposition in check. Now, let's just go back through this, all right? Go back to the beginning of the regular season, and let's just go point totals really quick. Just to start. They held the Cowboys to 20 points in Philly. They held the Chiefs to 17 points in Kansas City. They held a very talented, although there were injuries at the time, Rams offense to 26 points at home in Philly. They went on the road and kept Tampa Bay to 25 points. They allowed 21 at home to the Broncos, but that was a game that also was full of plenty of faults. I would say that 21 points is still something this offense should be able to match or pass, but okay. Now, they did have a terrible game October 9th. There's no covering that one up. 34 points allowed at MetLife to the Giants. All right, so there's one that you go, ugh. They only allowed the Vikings to score 22 points in Minnesota. They allowed 20 points the following week at home against the Giants. They held the Packers to 7 points in November. They held the Lions. Remember the vaunted Lions that were supposed to be an NFC contender. They held them to 9 points in Philly in mid-November. They went on the road and they gave up 24 points against the Cowboys. And remember, that was a game the Eagles were up 21-0. And then the wheels just fell off, and it was like the Eagles forgot how to score the ball. That should sound familiar. And I think the defense got gassed. They allowed 24 points. Am I going to say 24 points is something you shouldn't be able to overcome? No. The following week, they allowed 24 points at home to the Bears. Is 24 points something that should not be matchable by this offense? Absolutely not. Remember, the Eagles offense only scored 15 points that week. That was a very maddening game. So you go, all right, I'll give you one of those two. All right, so we've got two games that you could say, Then they lost at the Chargers in a game that they should have won. That was a game that went to overtime. You lost on field goal. Okay, but I'm still not going to say it was a bad one. 31-0 win in Philly against the Raiders. 29-18 win in DC. And then you had a 13-12 win on the road. So if you want to, right, let's even just say that you want to take a very arbitrary standpoint here and say 24 points or more. That's 1, 2. That's Bears, Dallas in Dallas, home against the Giants. Is that it? They had the one game against the Bucks that they allowed 25. They allowed 26 to the Rams. So you're looking at across the entire season, if 24 points is your arbitrary standard, that's 5 times the Eagles defense has allowed 24 points or more. 5. They've only allowed more than 6 points one time. It was that game against the Giants. Like, I'm sorry. I have a hard time today looking at this defense and saying, the defense failed to get the job done. Now, again, there have been games where late in games, the offense hasn't been able to put together a decent possession, and it has led to multiple long drives that the defense is on the field for. And I do think that these are still human beings, and they will get tired even if they're in great shape. All right, so we've got that. Defense looked great. Now we're going to get to the offense because the offense did not look great. The offense looked good in the first half, and then it all kind of died. All right, so hold on. Let me go over here really quick to the comments. Andrew Fawcett says, I never wanted to smash my TV more than that game yesterday. And also says, if that was a preview of the Super Bowl, it's going to be a shitty Super Bowl. Let's see. Nick says, after the game, I went on my patio and thought about my life. Tony Louis says, Bills fans waited patiently for the 20-year Patriots dynasty to end, only to lose to Mahomes and Burrow a couple of times, then take a backseat to Drake May. Window closed. I don't know if their window's closed, but I definitely think that the Bills are in a position they didn't expect to be. I think that they thought the Pats were going to take a few more years to kind of get back on track, and the Patriots look good. Mike Vrabel makes a huge difference, man. If you remember, when we were talking about potential replacements for Nick Sirianni at one point, I was like, Vrabel's a really good coach. Vrabel seems like he's a guy that guys are ready to run through a wall for, and also seems like a very smart coach. He turned that Patriots team around. So good for him. Good for them. Am I thrilled for New England fans? No, not at all. Derek Lentz says defense will win us a Super Bowl. And that ultimately is where I've kind of landed at this point, is that if the Eagles are going to win a Super Bowl, it's largely going to be because of this defense. We're going to get back in a second. Nick says the coordinator and head coach isn't Super Bowl caliber. I tend to agree. Things are kind of ugly, kind of really nasty, ugly. So, all right, we're going to flip now to the offense because this was not the kind of game that makes you feel better about things if you're an Eagles fan. This is the kind of game where, once again, the Eagles score early and then forget how to do so going forward. Listen, we were just going through some of the results earlier, but remember, there was that 21-0 lead in Dallas where it looked like this Eagles team was going to absolutely wipe the floor with the Cowboys and their playoff hopes in that game, and just kind of leave like a bloody mess on the star in the middle of the field. And instead, the offense went into its shell. It went into its protective, we won't turn the ball over shell. And they lost that game. Even if you go back to a few weeks ago, it was the same thing. Now, here's where I get nervous, right? So you just look at the second half of this game, right? Which, I mean, we could look at this a few days. One, Eagles get a touchdown. You're feeling great. There's the drive where Jalen Hurts completes an incredible pass into the hand. Note that I say the hand of A.J. Brown, who reaches his right hand out. The ball hits him. He's heading into the end zone. He's unable to corral it. And you go, all right, was he pushing off the defender? Like, what was going on with the left hand? And then you look on replay, and the defender has A.J. Brown's entire left arm wrapped up. Not just like, hey, we're, like kind of holding his wrist, like has his arm wrapped up. It's a very clearly missed pass interference call. And that drive ends with a field goal. And you go, all right, cool. Jake Elliott's back on the board. Like to see that. But that realistically should have been probably a touchdown, that drive, right? Because if A.J. Brown is able to corral that, it's a touchdown. If they call pass interference at the 1, I would like to believe that the Eagles offense is good enough to get into the end zone. So maybe you're looking at a 14-0 game. There were a whole bunch of missed calls in this game, but like that was, to me, the most egregious missed call. So you go into halftime with 13 points, where I think you very likely could have had at least 17, right? Because I think at least one of those should have resulted in a touchdown. And that's with like a pretty, I think, fair and safe rationale. Okay. I'd also argue that there was another drive in that first half where there were some questionable calls on second and third down, and you settled for another field goal. So, okay, you go into halftime, it's 13-0, and you're still feeling okay. Like you don't want to totally light yourself on fire, but you're going, all right, I've kind of seen this before. You need to see if you can make adjustments in the locker room at halftime. Come out, get an early touchdown in the third quarter, kind of assert your dominance, and get out of Buffalo with a strong win going into Week 18 against the Commanders team that you should beat and have a legit chance at the number 2 seed. These are all the things that we kind of expect to happen because we expect the Eagles to be run like a competent football team. They're the reigning Super Bowl champions. You would think at the very worst, they should be able to put together a competent second half, figure out what worked well, and build off it. Except Kevin Patullo and Nick Sirianni had a lobotomy at halftime. Nothing that they found success with in the first half was executed in the second half. Jalen Hurts had no passing yards in the second half. It was an absolute disaster. Here are some numbers for you. So the Eagles had 16 yards in the second half, which was the fourth lowest total of any team in any game this season. So in the 2025-26 season, right? 16 yards and a half in the second half is the fourth lowest of any total of any team in any game this year. That's insane. Only 4 times this season has a team, an offense, had 20 yards or fewer in the second half. Only 4 games that's happened this year. 20 yards or fewer in the second half. The Eagles have done that twice. So the Eagles are 2 of those 4 games. And oddly enough, the Eagles are 2-0 in those games. I can't make it make sense. You could try. It won't work. It's also worth noting that the Eagles offense absolutely sputtered in this one. Their last 4 possessions ended in 3 and outs. 4. Okay. Their last 5 possessions ended in punts. Not ideal. They had 1 first down for 17 yards at one point in the second half. That was it. We can also talk about the fact that in the second half, on first and second down, the Eagles had 9 carries, totaling 19 yards. However, 10 of those yards came on 1 rush, which means that 8 of the carries in the second half, 8 of those carries totaled 9 yards. That was it. Dreadful. The Eagles also, and we saw Jimmy Kemsky put this one out, so we'll give him the shout. You want to think about just how how uncreative this offense was in the second half. You want to talk about how this Eagles offense is afraid to commit mistakes, to commit turnovers. You want to talk about an Eagles team that has been nothing short of overly conservative in the second half of games when they have a lead. Jimmy Kemsky pulled this one up, so we'll give him the shout. 4 of the 5 second half drives that the Eagles had began run on first and second down. Run on the first 2 plays. 4 of the 5 second half drives. So this Eagles offense that actually did find some success through the air. Surprise, surprise. Some of the best looks they had the entire game were from under center play action. I know. Shocking. Truly shocking. They go 4 of their 5 drives in the second half started with back-to-back runs on the first 2 plays. So that's swell. I don't have a good way to say this. I have a lot of bad ways to say it. I don't have a good way to say it. There is something to be said for winning the turnover battle and looking at historic numbers and saying, yeah, this Eagles team is really good when they win the turnover battle. That is true. However, I will also very clearly point to the fact that when you play this overly conservative style, yeah, you might pick up a win here and there. Yeah, you know what? You might be able to survive in Buffalo and walk away with a 13-12 win because your defense played its ass off the entire game, because Jalen Carter was able to block an extra point, and because somehow Josh Allen wasn't able to hit a wide open receiver on a 2-point conversion with practically no time left on the clock. Yeah, you might be able to survive that, but that's not a winning formula in the postseason. Now, yeah, is winning the turnover battle, is that certainly something you want to do in the postseason? Yeah. Are you going to be able to just kind of cross your fingers and tootsie toes that you're going to make an incredible special teams play on an extra point that's going to force the opposition to potentially go for a 2-point conversion late in the game? No, I don't think that's a sustainable model for winning. I really don't. See, there's something that I can appreciate about the idea of trying to be really cautious, not turn the ball over, not give the opposition good field position, especially this Bills offense. But you still have to be willing to go for it at some point. You still have to be willing to do the thing that's gotten you to the dance, right? Like Sirianni, over his career as Eagles head coach, has not been afraid to go for it on fourth down, has not been afraid to throw conventional wisdom into the wind. He's a guy who, like, for better or worse, has sometimes made overly aggressive decisions. And yet here we are late in a game when you're still in the midst of trying to go for that number 2 overall seed in the NFC, when you're up against a team that you could potentially play in a Super Bowl. Nick Sirianni goes, hey, you know what? We'll just run it into a stacked box. I think I saw today the Eagles have run the 4th most plays, or the 4th highest percentage of plays, into an 8-man box, an 8-man front in the entire NFL. So the Eagles, oddly enough, like, they'll see the defense presenting a stacked box, very clearly expecting the Eagles to run. And for whatever reason, the Eagles don't audible out of it into a pass. They just decide, no, we're going to somehow win. I'm not going to show you, but you could find it right now. Cam Jurgens getting put on a turnstile again, because it happened last week, and it happened the week before, and it happened this week as well. And so I'll just point out, Cam Jurgens has not looked good. I don't know how much of it is injuries. I don't know how much of it is just bad technique, but like, you pretty much watch these games week in and week out, and especially on running plays, it feels like there's a defensive lineman just kind of waiting to destroy your quarterback or your running back in the backfield before the game even has or the play has a chance of even working. And if you think I'm just some, idiot with fluffy hair and a big bushy mustache on, a Monday afternoon, you would be right. But then I'll point back to a guy who I've oddly enough been calling kind of like a voice of reason to this point in the season, Seth Joyner. And Derek Gunn, who I respect the hell out of Derek Gunn. We're going to go out to them because on their post-game show, Seth Joyner made the same exact point about this offensive line. Let's go out to Seth Joyner.
Our offensive line absolutely stinks.
They
right
do
now.
stink.
They
But
stink. I've never seen on every single play, there's a defender in the backfield before the ball is even handed off.
Absolutely.
Somebody's.
I mean, I'm just an idiot. I think Seth Joyner's a smart guy who's played in this league. I think Derek Gunn is a really smart guy who's covered the Eagles for many a year. They're seeing it. I have to imagine that the offensive coordinator and the head coach are seeing it, and the offensive line coach is seeing it. So why is it happening? All right, back out to them.
Responsible for that guy, D. Gunn.
I understand it.
So how is it that you can be playing in the National Football League and you get your ass kicked on every damn running play?
This is the
every
offensive
single
line
one,
we
and you have no
season.
answer for it?
Nope. Look, we've watched this the whole season, haven't we? Haven't we been screaming about defenders getting in the backfield before Saquon touches the ball all season long?
Yes.
They had a 2-game reprieve against the Raiders and against Washington. And all of a sudden, it reared its ugly head again in this game.
You know why I think it reared its ugly head? The Raiders are absolute dog shit, and the Commanders are mostly dog shit. That's why. I mean, there's your difference between getting to beat up on a Raiders team that is absolutely lost in every way and a Commanders team that has had their season lost for quite some time. I could argue almost all the way back to the start of the season. It feels good to get those high confidence wins against bad teams, but then like the rubber meets the road and you play against a team that has legitimate Super Bowl aspirations in the Bills. And yeah, the Eagles walk away with a 13-12 win. I get it. If you want to live in this like land of, rainbows and smiles, and how could you complain about a game where the Eagles walk away with a win? You would have taken that win. Of course I would take that win. I could also be critical about things when they go sideways. Like, again, you're a missed pass interference call away from it being 17-0, and maybe we're not even talking about the 2-point conversion late in the game, right? It's entirely possible. But it's also fair to be like, yo, this team had things going in the first half. In the second half, it was like a totally different team. And it feels like multiple times this season, we've had the conversation about like halftime hits, and the team that comes out of the tunnel is not the same team that went in. this is a failure to adjust. Like if I'm going to give credit to Vic Fangio, right, for continuing to put his guys in successful positions, then I guess I also have to give Buffalo's defense a lot of credit in whatever adjustments they made at halftime to make the Eagles' life a lot more miserable in that second half and to stall a lot of drafts or a lot of drives early. But then I guess I also have to criticize Kevin Patullo and Nick Sirianni for not making similar adjustments and being ready for what they could see as a counter. And again, I think that ultimately this Eagles team is lucky insofar as the defense is very clearly Super Bowl caliber. Special teams has been okay at points, bad some weeks, pretty damn good other weeks. And the sum of the parts on this Eagles offense, despite potentially bad coaching, bad technique, bad game plans being installed, they are still such a talented team that they're able to score just enough points to win games. But man, it's not great. It's not great. Let's see. Nick Abe asks, what is Stoutland doing? I come back to Juergens has been playing through injuries and Dickerson's been playing through injuries. And so you go, all right, but is that at a net negative to the team? Like, again, if Cam Juergens at this point is playing so hurt that you can't run the tush push, that to this point has been an almost guaranteed conversion. Like, the tush push is out of the playbook. Is that because Lane Johnson's not there? Is it because Cam Juergens and Landon Dickerson are hurt? Is it because Steen can't play? Like, why is the tush push just gone and died? What's the actual reason behind it? I have to imagine it's because there are injuries on the line. Now, actually, while I'm on the tush push, while I'm there, I do want to point something out real quick that I think is pretty damn wild. Okay. Do you remember in the offseason, we were talking about how they were trying to ban the tush push? And this was a constant discussion at like the owners' meetings. And I think at a previous meeting as well. It got tabled. Do you remember that? Remember how Sean McDermott was a whiny little bitch about how the tush push is actually dangerous and about how you're putting your players in danger by running it, and that there's health and safety to kind of explain, the rationale behind wanting to block it. Do you remember that? Okay. I'm actually going to throw back out to a video that EJ Smith put out. I think he was with the Inquirer at this point, but now I think he's over at PHLY. He put this out in March. This was from the NFL owners meeting. I just want to remind everybody what Sean McDermott had to say about the tush push, right? And about why it needed to be banned. Again, this was March of this year. This was March 31st, 2025. This is Sean McDermott, the head coach of the Buffalo Bills, telling you why the tush push needed to be outlawed.
Yeah, I mean, I feel, I think similar to how I felt at the Combine. I've done, I've go deeper into more of the data on it and, just thought more about it as well. My position hasn't really changed at all. I feel where I'm most concerned is, even though there's not significant data out there to this point.
I love this too. He's like, we did a dive into the data. Now, even though the data is not out there, ...
My biggest concern is the health and safety of the players, first and foremost.
So he's concerned about the health and safety of the players, first and foremost. Remember we had this conversation earlier in the year? I think Amadeo actually clipped a thing back around that time where I kind of threw out this idea. Oh, is Sean McDermott really concerned about the health of his players, right? Because if he is, then that would make you think that, like, I don't know, maybe he shouldn't be running it, right? Like, if he thinks that players who run the tush push are ultimately going to get hurt, perhaps he shouldn't be running it. Okay. I'm actually going to throw back up. This is back when I had even longer hair. This was earlier this year. Let me see. What was the date on this here video? I can't find it, but this is earlier in the year. We're going to do Russception here really quick. I hate doing it, but I'm going to do it just to remind people, because I did a little breakdown earlier in the year of some of the issues that I had with young Sean McDermott whining, bitching, moaning about the tush push. All right, let's go out to wow. That was a bold look. Is my face skinnier there? I think my face might be skinnier there. That's part of another problem. All right, let's go out to this from earlier in the year.
What if I told you?
Oh my gosh, now we're gonna have ads? Who puts ads on their content? Are you kidding me? All right, hold on. Oh wait, I know I did it. It went to the full episode. There we go. I think that the second biggest crybaby bitch in this whole thing has been Sean McDermott. Oh, and I will continue to call out his hypocrisy. This is akin to like if you go back, right? At the last meeting, Sean McDermott had that summit at his table. He had the media availability. It was the combine.
And he was talking about player safety. We care about the players. We care about the safety of the players, and that's why we don't think that has any place in this league. The brotherly shove, the tush push.
And then somebody said, it was Elliott Shore Parks, goes, then why did you run it the second most times? And then he just kind of like blank stared. Ooh. You may be wondering how I got here. Ooh. And like kind of like a malfunction. Must change answer to not prepackaged. They caught me. They caught me. They caught me. Wee, 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 buffalo wings. Wee, 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 wee. McDermott like had a freak out. Mm-hmm. And then he gave you like a somewhat ridiculous response, and he couldn't explain his hypocrisy because, again, if you're going to argue player safety as a reason to ban the tush push, but you've run it the second most times in the league, then that either means you're full of shit because you don't actually care about player safety, or you fucking hate Josh Allen and your offensive line if you're going to keep running it knowing that it puts them at greater peril and greater chance of getting injured, right? Like there's no middle ground there. Yes. So you know what's crazy is that clip came from a show that I did back on May 21st. May 21st. Okay. So to recap, we are now 7 months beyond when that episode aired. And I feel the same way about Sean McDermott today as I did back then 7 months ago. Hypocritical crybaby bitch. Because he spent the offseason complaining about the health and safety, despite the fact that his team had run the tush push the second most times in the NFL. And then how exactly did the Bills score their touchdowns on Sunday? Did they score through a beautiful bomb down the field, 60-yard bomb off the arm of Josh Allen? No, they scored via the tush push. I'd actually argue to some extent they should have probably run the tush push on the 2-point conversion. I think there's a legitimate case to be made that they should have run the tush push when going for 2. I really do. And I think they probably would have gotten it, given how exhausted the Eagles defense was and given the success that they had to that point. I think that there's a chance they could have gotten it. But yeah, Sean McDermott complained about the tush push. And then I don't know if he thought he was being cute. Like maybe that's what it was. Maybe McDermott thought he was being cute, running the tush push against the Eagles, scoring twice. And then maybe that was going to be the thing. Like he was going to shove it, stick it to the Eagles, but it didn't work. So anyway, we walk away from Sunday's game. And I think that on the whole, even though the Eagles offense sputtered in the second half, you'd go, okay, it's happened. You hope that next week against the Commanders, the starters get some work. They move on. They feel pretty good about it. The defense continues to kick some serious ass. You avoid injury. You're going to host a playoff game. Hopefully you get that number 2 seed. And then whoever gets the number 1 seed loses a game. And maybe you get to host the rest of the playoffs through Philadelphia, which obviously gives you a much better chance of repeating as Super Bowl champions. And all of that should have been the focus, except, well, it wasn't, because after the game, we had this happen.
Not so much anymore. Love this shit.
That wasn't just some guy. That wasn't just some fan. That's the Eagles head coach, Nick Sirianni, commenting, yelling about Buffalo Bills fans. A lot of talking by those Buffalo fans. Not so much anymore. Okay. Also note, AJ Brown is here. And if you've been paying attention to this on social media today, there have been some different interpretations about the facial expression he's making, but we're going to... Now look, this guy's carrying the pylons. I turn around like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Keep going.
Not so much anymore.
Now, if you freeze it here, A.J. Brown doesn't look particularly thrilled, right? Like if you stop it here, A.J. Brown ain't looking like too thrilled with the head coach. They make eye contact. Now, the locker room's over here, okay? Sirianni very clearly at some point realizes the camera's up here. So now he's playing to the camera. Good pro wrestling heel promo.
So much anymore.
Now, again, we freeze here. Now, I know a lot of people thought that this was A.J. Brown giving his coach the death stare. I actually disagree. Because right there is where I think you get the feeling, right? Like there is a smirk. Now, if you want to be a cynic, you can look at that and be like, he's like, man, I'm done with this asshole. I think there's part, and I think there's a wink in here too, right? And then Sirianni, here you go, Sirianni, look at it. There's a smile there from A.J. Brown as he goes behind Sirianni. I think there was a wink and a smile. I think that there's just kind of like, all right, talk your shit. Now, I think A.J. Brown is also a very intelligent guy and realizes the second half performance is not good enough. Now, Sirianni mean mugging at the camera only to then realize, oh no, I went past the locker room. I went past.
Love this shit.
There you go. Talking to him. There you go. So, there are obviously people all over social media who are ready to have the head of Nick Sirianni again. And there are some who looked at A.J. Brown and his body language and the facial expression. Or like, clearly A.J. Brown hates Nick Sirianni. And this is, you know, there's part of me that just wants to, on a human level, be like, yeah, you know what? Go talk your shit, coach. Like, you got a big win in Buffalo. Nobody ever wins in Buffalo. You know, good on you. Like, good job, coach. Like, well done. They had 16 yards in the second half. Jalen Hurts didn't complete a pass. And they were a blocked extra point and a really bad throw and a 2-point conversion away from losing this game. And unless there's something that I'm missing, right? Unless Nick Sirianni all of a sudden started telling Vic Fangio how to run the defense, I'm not exactly sure that Nick Sirianni should be the one peacocking after that game. Like if Vic Fangio were going up that tunnel looking miserable, and we love Vic Fangio. He can look as miserable as he wants. If Vic Fangio were walking up that tunnel to the locker room, and then he started talking like that, or he just kind of muttered to himself, they're talking a lot before, they're not talking now. And he looked over at Jalen Carter, who made a big play. Looked over at Jahad Campbell, who made a big play. Looked over at Cooper DeJean, whose alleged girlfriend Nikki Bella was tweeting about the Eagles yesterday and dropped an Instagram video of her in an Eagles jersey. If he looked over, kind of like tapped him up, you'd be like, all right, good on you, Vic Fangio, talk your shit. But Nick Sirianni, you know, from all accounts, has nothing to do with the defense that held Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills to 12 points. Nick Sirianni, you know, is supposedly the offensive mastermind who's had to get involved because his boy Kevin Patullo hasn't exactly had a great season. 13 points in the first half, nothing of value to show for it in the second half. I'm not sure that Sirianni should be out there peacocking after the game. Now, you could tell me I'm wrong. By all means, if you want to let me know, you let me know in the comments if I'm off base. But, like, I think that's the point where you're just kind of like, yeah, you know, hell yeah, guys. Like, we got it done. And if you're going to look at the camera and you're going to do the mean mug and you go, hey, not how we drew it up, we'll take the win. You move on. You know, I think if that's Nick Sirianni walking off the field, hey, not how we had it drawn up, got that win. Huge win. Teams don't win in Buffalo. We got the job done. On to the next one. Mean mug into the camera, hit it with a wink, you know, give a little fist bump to A.J. Brown. I think we're all kind of looking at going, all right, like he's goofy, but whatever. But man, after that second half, I don't know. I really don't know. I think it's kind of ridiculous, but that's just me. All right, now, there you go. Amadeo says you don't glow it after a game like that. I mean, I think that you could feel pretty good about it, but I'm not so sure. You know, Nick obviously says, let's go 17 yards. 456 UConn says, shave your head again, Nick. That would be really funny. 456 UConn says, Nick is hilarious. I love him. There you go. Let's see. Jim Grassa says, is this the Zapruder film? No. Marcus I6L, I think that is, says A.J. Brown tolerates Sirianni. It's obvious. Yeah. I mean, like, there's part of me that wonders, like, do these guys secretly hate him, or are they just kind of like, yeah, you know what? I'd rather him be out talking the show. We're just going to get our job. Like, we're going to do our job. I don't know. I really don't know. Robert Behrman says, like him or not, the win percentage is up there with Lombardi and Madden, which is fair. I mean, listen, do I think that Nick Sirianni is solely responsible for the success of this team? No, I don't. Do I think that it would be disingenuous to say he has nothing to do with it? I think that would be disingenuous. I don't think that's fair. But man, there are times you're just like, hey, just like walk off the fucking field. Like, just like, all right, you know, chirp at the Bills fans. You know, maybe see you in the Super Bowl if you guys buy tickets. Like, that's fine. I don't care. Fine. Mean mug into the camera after that second half. Like, I don't know. Seems a little bit crazy to me, but who knows? What does this say? He at H Birds fan from Cali says, it seems to me Sirianni's taking credit for Vic's coaching. What did Nick do? If he's not in the offensive meetings or defense meetings, then what does he do? This is a question that we've all been asking for a while. Tony Louis says Nikki Bella is invited to all Eagles games now. Yeah. She can show up to the games. I'll tell you what. Nikki Bella, I bet, would have a higher popularity rating right now than T Swift. Nikki Bella can do whatever she wants. She can come to whatever game she wants. She can go follow Cooper DeJean on the road. I don't care. I just want everybody to be happy. Amadeo says, imagine if Jalen took the sack that Allen took. That actually was maybe the play of the game. Massive sack. What was it? A loss of 15, 20 yards at midfield. Took the Bills from around the 30-yard line, I think, is where the ball was snapped, to about the 50-yard line. Yeah, I mean, there'd be talks on WIP today about how Tanner McKee wouldn't make that decision. You need to hand the ball over to Tanner McKee next week, and maybe even into the playoffs. Havoken 45 says, I think the weather also helped some on Allen's missed play. If no weather, the score would be different. I don't know if that's true. I mean, remember, though, they were both playing in the same conditions, so I don't know if that's totally fair. The bird strip from Cali says, Nick needs to go back to watering plants and growing flowers. Remember his intro press conference. Yeah. I don't know. All right. So the Eagles game. We walk away from it. I roll my eyes at Nick Sirianni. I feel really good about the defense. I'm disappointed in the offense. I'm even more disappointed in somebody else who had nothing to do with the game, but was in attendance for the game. I don't know if I've ever been as disappointed in a Philadelphia media personality than James Seltzer from WIP. And if you missed this somehow, well, sorry about you. So James Seltzer went through a table in Buffalo. As you may or may not be aware, Bills Mafia, they do the thing. They put people through tables, right? As if it's, a TLC match in WWE. The Hardys, the Dudleys, and Edge and Christian are like going to pop out at a tailgate and, jump off a ladder or something. So James Seltzer from WIP lines up to go through a table. And mind you, this video is put up by Elliott Shore Parks, also of WIP. With friends like this, who needs enemies? Here's a video. This is James Seltzer going through a table. I want you to just think for a second, what would James Seltzer look like going through a table? And now prepare yourself for whatever the hell this was. All right, what? I'm going to take the comment section. You go, sorry, what? Oh, let's make this more of a full screen. All right, so let's start. Let's actually assess this. This looks like he's paying homage to Macho Man Randy Savage, right? He starts with the hands up. Ooh, yeah. He's about to drop the big elbow, right? Was he thinking about dropping a big elbow onto the table? I don't know. Now, I will also note that the footing here doesn't seem totally solid. I don't know what that footing is supposed to be. He doesn't seem comfortable on it. It's a very short jump to the table. Maybe he thinks that he's going to overshoot the table. But he does the hands up. And then he comes in. Now, I'm going to try to assess. Let's check the footing here. Whatever he's standing on, if it's a speaker or whatever, it doesn't move. So he goes with a 2-foot jump. He's already off. He's off balance here. It looks like he's trying to pivot. Is he trying to go for a big elbow? I don't know. But now the feet are up. Now he's in no man's land here. All right. You got to commit to the bit. You're going to drop the big elbow and land on your side. You're going to go for like the Finn Balor coup de grace, the 2-foot stomp off the top. You're going to like swanton bomb, go for an extended front flip like Jeff Hardy. You're going to like belly flop through it, right? Or maybe go a little cross-body action. I don't know what this was supposed to be because it feels like partway through here, he just bails, right? He just bails out on the jump and ends up going foot first, but its left foot makes contact, which then slips. He slips off the end of the table. Then he almost crotches himself. He actually might have crotched himself here. No, I think his right leg actually gets down first. He's close to crotching himself. And he kind of ends in like a double knee lift thing. And then, unfortunately, rolls over. Now the table clearly, bends. It doesn't break. There is some weight there, so he bends the table. Let's watch this again. I mean, I think he actually did more damage to himself than anything else. Here, let's. Oh, there we go. We could take it down to 0.25 speed. Oh my God! My God, that's James Seltzer. Playing on some macho man, Randy Savage. Oh my God, don't do this! My God, don't do that! My God! My God! My God, what was that? What in the hell was that? He's gonna slam that table straight to hell! Oh God, James Seltzer, don't do this! That table has a family that it will be getting back to very soon. That is... Anyway, that to me was amazing. It was amazing stuff. Like, I have no idea. I have no idea what that was supposed to be. Not good. Not good. Not good at all. Amadeo says he should have taken a Braun Breaker spear into the table. That'd have been pretty cool. Hoboken says, because they see it on TV, you can get hurt doing that. What people think could have broke something. I don't know what that means, but you could go through a table like that without really hurting yourself in a meaningful way. So, there you go. Just saying, really quick. So, there you go. All right, let's get to the most recent news, which is the Flyers having a conversation about Christian Dvorak and the possibility that the Flyers are looking to re-sign Christian Dvorak. Now, I saw this. I almost had a heart attack because I thought that Nick Abe was reporting this, 6x6 for Dvorak with a no movement clause, 6 years, $6 million AAV with a no movement. I'll tell you this. If that happens, the next time I end up at a Flyers game, January 6th against the Anaheim Ducks, I will wait for Danny Briere at the elevator and I will ask him to get a mental acuity, a mental fitness test if they go 6 years at $6 million per with a no movement clause. Okay. My God. Can I just say, I understand that Flyers Twitter especially likes to complain. And I unfortunately have started delving into more of Flyers Facebook groups and seen some of the absolute insanity that they put out, the insanity that exists over on Facebook. And I just want to point out to people, I do this in a condescending way. This is just like, this is where I'm at. This is where I think the team is. And this is just how I think this whole thing kind of lands right now. Elliot Friedman put out a report over the weekend that the Flyers are considering an extension for Christian Dvorak because they want a center, right? So I'm going to go out here really quick and we're going to take a look and we're going to take a listen. And this is Elliot Friedman over the weekend reporting on the Flyers and their potential conversations about an extension with Christian Dvorak, who they brought in here in the offseason and has been a very good player for them. All right, let's go out to Elliot Friedman.
I was talking to a few teams today. Everybody's always looking for centers. You can never have enough centers. Well, the Flyers signed Christian Dvorak on July 1st last year to a one-year deal. When you sign a one-year contract, the earliest you can do an extension is on January 1st. The Flyers and Dvorak are talking extension. I think everybody here would tell you that it has to work for both sides to happen. He's played very well there. He's got 24 points in 35 games. And what I can say, Ron, is that there's other teams out there who do not expect Dvorak to hit the market now. They think he's going to sign, but both sides have to make it work.
Okay. We're just going to have a moment here. We're going to have a moment here to try to be fair and balanced as we are on the Russ Joy Show every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on YouTube, Facebook, and X, and wherever you get your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music. We're going to try to be really fair. And at the same time, fair might align with your thoughts and it might go totally against your thoughts. Okay. So Christian Dvorak, 24 points, 35 games. You extrapolate that out over the course of a full season and you say, all right, you're probably looking at a guy that's going to be in the 60s point total wise, right? If that were to continue over the course of an entire season, could he get to 60 points? Could he get to like 55 points? Let's round down. Let's say 55 points. Would a 55-point Christian Dvorak be a good signing for this Flyers team? Well, let's put it in perspective. Let's have an actual conversation about where the Flyers are cap-wise. Let's have a conversation about what the Flyers have coming up in terms of cap availability, and let's talk about where the Flyers are in terms of committed salary beyond this season. As of right now, the highest paid forward on the team is Travis Konechny, $8.75 million. He is signed for a ridiculous amount of time that we are not going to discuss here because I don't want to make anybody drive off the road. Sean Couturier is the second highest paid forward, $7.75 million for a very long period of time that we're not going to talk about in its entirety because if we do, people will drive off the road. Those are your two highest paid forwards. Now, if you set aside Travis Sanheim's $6.25 million to be the top defenseman on the team, which at the time was kind of questionable, has proven to be a very good deal. He is a number one pair, not a number one defenseman, but a top pair defenseman. I think even on a really good team, I think Travis Sanheim has really grown into that role. We'll say 6.25 for him as a steal. Good job. Owen Tippett, $6.2 million for a very long period of time we shan't talk about so people don't drive off the road. Those are your top paid forwards. Konechny, Couturier, Tippett. 8.75, 7.75, 6.2. Okay. With all that in mind, do the Flyers have other forwards under contract beyond this year? They do. Noah Cates is under contract for 2 more seasons at $4 million to be preferably your third or fourth line center. Okay. And there were times this season where when he was playing with Brink and Forster, they were kind of the de facto number one line. I don't think that Cates is a number one center. I'm not really convinced that he's a number two center. I think he's probably somewhere around like a number 3, and that's not bad. Or maybe he ends up at $4 million being a really awesome fourth line center, and the Flyers rethink how they've been building that fourth line over the last few years. We've seen guys like Carl Grundstrom do well. We've seen guys like Nikita Grabenkin, who I still think is better than a fourth line player, play some meaningful minutes on the fourth line and look good. We've seen Denver Barkey get in the mix. I would almost make an argument that you could probably field a good fourth line that isn't all finesse and skill, but also isn't, this big plodding archaic fourth line. Okay. So Cates, $4 million. Garnet Hathaway has 1 more year left at $2.4 million. I think you pretty much would try to sell that as fast as you can. Matvei Mishkov has 1 season remaining on his ELC before he hits restricted free agency at $950,000. Jet Lachenko, whenever he comes up, $942,000 against the cap when he plays at this level. Okay. And then you have Tyson Forster. Forster's set to become a restricted free agent in 2 years. He has 1 year remaining at 3.75. So you take all that into account and you say, all right, where should Christian Dvorak fit? Where does he fit? Timeline, age-wise, the like. Where does Christian Dvorak fit? Well, Dvorak, at least in terms of your timing, isn't totally in a bad spot age-wise. You don't look at him and say, all right, you're totally screwed if you sign him. He's not like 34. He turns 30 in February. He's not a guy that you want to sign long-term. I wouldn't say that a 5 or 6 year contract to Christian Dvorak is going to age particularly well. I would also kind of flip this on its head and say that, like, if you can bring Christian Dvorak in for 2, maybe 3 years, and then he comes up for another contract with a raised cap in 2-3 years, and by that point, you haven't been able to develop a guy like a Jet Lachenko, who they believe in, or a Jack Nesbitt, who they believe in. If you can't develop another center to at least be what Dvorak should be, a probably third-line center, well, then you have significant issues just schematically as an organization. If you can't develop a guy to replace that at the very least within the next 2 to 3 years, then this whole thing has been a massive fuck-up and failure, right? So we'll kind of set that aside. Age-wise, this doesn't annoy me if it's like a 3-year deal. A 6-year deal, like somebody had suggested, would be kind of crazy to me. right? The idea of going up until his age, well, let's see, you would do 6 years on top of it. So he would be 30 to start it. So he'd be starting the final season at 36. Like, I wouldn't love that. I think that would actually be a bad contract. Now, $6 million if he's a third line center 3 years from now, all right, that will be quote unquote a steal. I also don't want to theoretically overpay a guy because he's had a really good start to a season where he has largely been tied to a point per game player in Trevor Zegras. And at the same time, I will use that same argument in the inverse to kind of point out why it's not a terrible idea to bring back Christian Dvorak. Listen, this Flyers team, for better or worse, is afraid to play Trevor Zegras as a center. They're petrified of it. They don't think that he can win in the faceoff circle. They don't think that he's a 200-foot player. They don't think he's a responsible defensive player. And so they have largely tied him to Christian Dvorak. And so you could say that in a whole bunch of ways. Is Zegras such a good player that he's getting this much better version of Dvorak than he's been in his career? That is entirely possible. Is Dvorak playing this kind of hybrid, he takes the faceoffs and then mostly shifts to wing? Is that allowing Zegras to be that point per game guy? That is also possible. Do I think it would probably be worth a look at some point to split them up for 15 or 20 games and to maybe have Trevor Zegras play center for 15 or 20 games in year 3 of a supposed rebuild? Yeah, I think it would be helpful. You know why? Because I think that ultimately, not only are you trying to negotiate with Christian Dvorak in his camp, you're also trying to figure out the value of Trevor Zegras. You know how it would probably help to figure out the value of Trevor Zegras? Figure out if he's a center or not. Once and for all, definitively. Because you would have to assume that at some point, Zegras and his camp are going to believe that he's a center. The Flyers are going to say, no, you're a wing. They're going to have different AAVs in mind. They're going to have different lengths of contract in mind. And if Zegras' camp is smart, they're going to try to price their client as being a center, which is going to cost more than a winger will. And the Flyers will conversely say, well, we're not playing him at center because we don't think he can be trusted to be a center. He's definitely played more as a winger. And then, after the faceoffs, he just kind of shift into more of that center role. But, we aren't so sure. Okay. Are you trying to pinch pennies on Trevor Zegras? Like, is there a thought here that the Flyers are only playing him mostly at wing because the Flyers want to work out a contract with Trevor Zegras priced as a wing instead of a center, and then he's going to sign a contract, and then they go, LOL, now you're the 2C. I don't think it's that. But, man, you kind of have to see what he is as a center. Like, they did this during the preseason. They did it in, very small spurts in the regular season so far, 30-odd games in. But, I'm sorry. I'm still not satisfied with, knowing for sure Trevor Zegras is or isn't a center. The Flyers also shouldn't be satisfied with so far deciding if he is or isn't a center. That's a problem. It's actually a failure. That's an organizational failure. That's a coaching. Is that the front office not wanting to get involved? I don't know. But I would like to see what Trevor Zegras is as a center. I'd also like to see over a period of time, what do Christian Dvorak and Trevor Zegras look like separated? Because if you were to put Christian Dvorak on a line with a Tippett and a Brink, or Tippett and maybe move Cates to wing or something, and Dvorak is somehow able to unlock a Tippett and make Tippett a more consistent player, well then, hell yeah. Extend Dvorak even beyond the 3 years. If he is really, truly a guy who's going to get the most out of a player who's very inconsistent in a Tippett. But if you split him and Zegras up and Dvorak just becomes, at best a fourth-line player, well, then that speaks more to Zegras' ability than it does to Dvorak's. If you split them up and all of a sudden Zegras is thrown into the deep end as a center and he can't swim without Dvorak there to kind of save his life, well, then that Zegras is only a point-per-game guy, largely due to the defensive responsibility that Dvorak brings to the lineup, and then maybe that changes the number on Zegras. But they're not splitting them up in a meaningful way over a meaningful period of time. You don't actually have any answers. So right now, it just seems like these two guys are so tied together that you can't really make heads or tails of, is Zegras getting this great play out of Dvorak relative to the rest of his career? Or is Dvorak unlocking this version of Zegras that we all hoped was possible and now apparently is? I don't know. I do know that historically, Christian Dvorak has not put up sensational numbers. He's been at or around 30 points most seasons in his career. He had a 20-game stretch in 2018-19, which we'll kind of throw out. And he had a 30-game run with Montreal a couple years ago. We could throw that one out. When he has played at least 50, 60 games, he's hit the 30-point threshold in his career. And right now he's at 24, and I said he's probably on pace for somewhere around 50, 55 points. Okay. I like having an idea of how good a player is. I like having an idea of how reliant a player is on another. And right now, I don't think there's a way for us to actually, with a meaningful sample size, yes, we could break it out, depending on shift and depending on power play versus even strength and when those guys have been on different shifts. I'm sure we can try to extrapolate some data and try to get a better feel for how impactful each of those players are independent of one another. I'm talking about a real quantifiable data set, 15 games, 20 games of being split up. How good are each of these players individually? And how much of an impact do they have on their respective lines when they're not playing together? And once you have that, then by all means, negotiate, figure it out. Get a good contract in place with Christian Dvorak. Get a good contract in place with Trevor Zegras. Until you have that, I think it's really, really hard to make that determination and to get the job done and get the deals done. Like, I understand some of the social media angst about signing Dvorak, because you look at him and go, oh, there you go. That's a dude who's going to be 30 in February. This is a team in year 3 of a rebuild. This is a team that doesn't need to commit long-term to a bottom 6 forward. And those people are all right. They are. On the surface, you should not commit to a 30-plus-year-old center / hybrid wing who has never in his career surpassed 39 points, 38 points. Highest was 2019, 2020, didn't have 38 points. He's never gone beyond 38 points in his career. You don't extend that guy beyond 3 years under any circumstances. I understand that thought process. But here's the problem. And this is partially a Flyers problem, okay? The Flyers very clearly banked on the 2026 offseason as being a place that they were going to get an impact player, or maybe even 2. And that free agent class is gone. They will not get a meeting with Kirill Kaprizov. They will not get a meeting with Connor McDavid. And if they had some hope that they were going to somehow get Quinn Hughes out of Vancouver and that Vancouver was going to trade their franchise cornerstone defenseman to the team that their former coach decided to bail on them in the offseason for, that also didn't come to fruition. And if the Flyers are now going to flip this to be a 2027 argument because Connor McDavid and Quinn Hughes will both be available in the summer of 2027, I got news for you, homie. I'm not putting a whole lot into that, okay? I'm not. And I don't think the Flyers should either. Would it be a hell of a move in like NHL 25 or 26? Yeah, it'd be a great set of moves. Is it realistic? Not under any circumstances. So the Flyers went very many eggs in the free agent class basket, and now it's gone. And the depth that they might have hoped was going to be there in free agency is gone. And so now you're in a scenario where you either have to consider extending Christian Dvorak, trading Christian Dvorak, or letting Christian Dvorak walk in free agency without a legitimate, certifiable replacement on this roster or in this organization. Unless this team is so unbelievably high on Jet Lachenko that they believe he's going to be ready for next year to assume the duties of the 3C or maybe even a 2C on this team, they don't have much of a choice. Now, again, if we're talking 6x6, no movement clause, no. If we're talking $6.5 or $7 million for 2 or 3 years, that seems very high. But on a 2 or 3 year commitment with no center in the pipeline, I could maybe be talked into it. On a 2-year deal, 3 years at worst. I will also point out, under no circumstances should any player on this team be given a no movement clause. Not a single one. No way. No, thank you. Like, the more I think about it, the more I'm like upset with myself to even consider $6 or $7 million, even on a 2 or 3 year contract for a bottom 6 forward. And yet I don't have much of a choice because the free agent options aren't there, which means that the cost of acquiring a similar player on the trade market is going to be astronomically higher because there is such a shortage of centers in this league. Now, could you make the case that instead of assigning that cap money to a guy like Christian Dvorak, this team should just sell the farm and go out and try to get a number 1 center? Well, of course. Yeah, that would help the team tremendously. What team is going to give you their number one center right now? What team right now is going to give you their number one defenseman? Another hole on this team, in this organization. Is Buffalo stupid enough to? Yeah, Buffalo's always dumb. But is there like another team out there realistically that's going to trade you their 1C or trade you a 2C that could maybe blossom into a 1C? Like, I don't see it right now. And I also don't see the Flyers like looking to make a hockey trade to go give a change of scenery to a guy to come in here. Like, does it move you? Does it move your spirit if Shane Wright becomes a trade target for this Flyers team? And what are you trading for him? And what are you hoping to get out of him? Like, is there still some hope that he's going to somehow blossom into a 1C in the right circumstances? Like, I'm not so sure. So this is part of the general frustration. And I understand it among Flyers fans that like you're in year 3 of this rebuild. There's not a 1C in the system. There's not a 1D in the system. There's maybe a number one goalie in Zavragin in the system. And there is some good depth there. You want to say Kolosov could be good. You want to say that Bjarnason could be good. Vladar's been really good. But like realistically, you don't have a 1C and you don't have a 1D. You're in the 3rd year of this rebuild. It doesn't look like you're going to end up in the lottery. And there are no centers coming up in free agency. And the price of a center on the trade market is probably going to be astronomically high. And so now you're looking at potentially signing a 30-year-old bottom 6 forward to maybe $6 million plus a year. I get why people are frustrated. I get it. I do. And all of that said, I'm not so sure that you're going to get the same Trevor Zegras without Christian Dvorak because this team will not separate them for a meaningful enough segment of time that we can get an actual sample size and figure out what we have in each of these players. So that is the problem, my friends. I get the frustration. And at the same time, I think Dvorak's been really good for this team. I think that Zegras has obviously been very good for this team. I think keeping the two of them together for at least 2 or 3 more years, if this is how they're going to play together, is still a net positive for this team. But we will see. All right, I'm going to go out to the comments here really quick, and then we're going to go over for a second. Let's go out to the comments. I took the comments down. I didn't mean to do that. All right. Oh, I did. I did that for the one video, and then I forgot to put them back up. Nick Obby says Dvorak wants to get paid. It's his last payday. If it's a 2 or 3 year deal, he could still get a really nice contract in like 2 years or so. Says Zegras will get 10 to 11 million at this rate. I'm not sure that that's the case. I think that there was like a legitimate chance to try to get Zegras somewhere around like 8 or 9 million early in the season before he really extended this like point per game stuff. I think the Flyers like really screwed up by not getting a deal done sooner. We'll see though. God knows. It could be anything. Let's see. Robert Behrman says, my hope was he could teach guys to win draws in his own end. Yeah, it'd be swell. Tim Tobin said, Michkov is essentially a $4 million a year cap hit on his ELC. Jim Grossa says, I'd give Dvorak, I don't know if that means 3 years at $4 million. I'm going to assume that is 3 years at $4 million. I don't think that'll get it done, but who knows? Nick Abe also says Flyers have so many guys on long contracts. Yeah, I mean, that's a problem. B Condor 1 says Konechny sounds like he doesn't want Dvorak to go anywhere. I missed this clip, or at least I wasn't able to find it while also doing the show. Should I have a producer? I don't know. But apparently Konechny said something on one of the national telecasts about the value of having Dvorak on the team. I'll see if I could find it for like Wednesday show or something, but I don't have it readily available right now, which is, I guess, a bummer. Perhaps I should have it, but anyway. Jim Grossa says they want him to be a wing so they don't have to pay him what he wants, meaning Zegras. I'm actually kind of worried that that's a thing. Flyers Purgatory says Zegras has been hurt the last 2 years. Got to play a full healthy season before you play him. I think that's a big part of why the Flyers didn't get a deal done to this point. They want to see if he's going to be able to stay healthy, but I guess I get it. But you know, if he ends up being a point per game guy at the end of the season, then the starting point is going to be like 10.5 million. So yeah, there you go. 456 Yukon says we also gave Coots that ridiculous contract. Dvorak's contract is not that. The Couturier contract, I will actually defend a little bit in that, like, he was a Selke guy. He was a legitimate two-way center. And, like, he had 2 back surgeries. You can't bank on that. They wouldn't have given him that contract if he had had the 2 back surgeries ahead of time. I don't know what to tell you. Let's see. Amadeo says, once again, that's why banking on free agency to build your team is the most flawed plan ever. Jim Grasso says, on Dvorak, there's zero chance they trade him at the if they're in a playoff spot at the trade deadline. I agree with that. Let's see. Nick Abe says Buffalo's on an 8-game winning streak. Yeah, I didn't say that they're going to trade Darlene now, but Buffalo stinks and they're kind of dumb, and you just never know. Anything can happen. Amadeo says the only route you can go is offer sheets, but they don't have the stones for that. Nobody does. Nobody wants to hurt the feelings of their colleagues in the NHL. It's an old boys club. Nobody likes to go after anybody's restricted free agents. I think if you're the Flyers at some point, you do have to consider it though, because the rest of the potential levers you could pull have been detached, we'll say. Steven 14367 says we need to absolutely unload and keep the rebuild going. Unload anything of value. Our future is 2 years away in net, and some good young forwards will be here. Build from within. They're not going to do that. And I would argue that the time to do it was 2 years ago. Like, if you remember, I was very much of the thought that, like, Sanheim, when he was given that contract by Fletcher, it seemed a little bit silly. And I thought that if you could trade and get off that contract, it might not be the worst thing. I was wrong. I'm happy to admit that I was wrong. The Konechny deal I thought was a bad deal. The Tippett deal I thought was a bad deal. The Konechny deal having a no movement clause was absolute insanity. The Tippett contract, if you can get to a point where he's a 30-goal scorer, then maybe at some point you can swindle a team and say, look how fast he is, and he can also score 30 times a season. But I don't think that they'll trade him if he becomes a 30-goal scorer. They'll just accept the streakiness. Is it fair to compare Owen Tippett to Pat Burrell? I'm starting to wonder if it is. Obviously, Owen Tippett is fast and Pat Burrell was slow, but it's the streaky all or nothing of it all that makes you kind of lose your mind. It's the first round status of those guys. I'm going to workshop that and I'll come back to you guys another day with it. But I do think that, like, not trading guys like Konechny when you could have gotten actual assets for him, that you could have either turned into another legitimately good player or into other potentially valuable elite assets in the draft. I do think that that's where they went off course. I do think that that was the missed opportunity. And I've said this for a while, but I do think that they would have gone with more of a teardown and a tank mentality had it not been for Michkov coming over early. I do think that that changed the calculus on things for this team. So we will see. All right. Well, we ended on a real positive here, talking about the Flyers to end the show. Sorry. Anyway, we will be back. I think Wednesday. I need to see. Wednesday's tricky because it's New Year's Eve. I think we'll be back Wednesday, or I'll pre-record a show on Tuesday for Wednesday. But there should be a new show on YouTube, Facebook, X, and in your podcast feed on Wednesday. And then, of course, we'll be back on Friday. And then we get ourselves, going into the new year. I guess Friday will technically be in the new year. So it's been a really fun 2025. If I don't talk to you before the new year, I do want to thank all of you who join me each and every time, or if it's, once every week or once every 2 weeks, or you find the show in the podcast feed and you sporadically listen to it. No matter how often you're here, no matter how often you're live or how often you listen after the fact, I do appreciate each and every one of you. I will ask that you share the show with a few people in your life that listen to sports shows or watch sports shows or looking for, I don't know, whatever this is. I don't actually know how I would define this show. It's slightly irreverent sometimes. It's level-headed sometimes. It's chaotic many times. I don't know how I would describe it, but I would ask that you share it. We're over 1,800 subscribers now, which is almost 4x where we ended last season. So that's pretty cool. We've taken that audience to a new height. Big thank you to Amadeo for doing all the clipping on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. If you also follow the Russ Joy Show on those platforms, make sure you follow, hit those videos with a like as well. It's helpful to the show. It helps more people find this here program. All right. That's a lot of words and a lot of thoughts. And now it's time to go. Until Wednesday, probably. This has been the Russ Joy Show, and I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart. And it's also the name of the show. I will talk to some of you in person and as well online on Snow the Goalie Radio Tuesday, 6 o'clock at Chickies and Pete's in Parks Casino in Bensalem, Pennsylvania. Or I will talk to you later this week here on the Russ Joy Show. Everybody have a marvelous Monday, a terrific Tuesday, and I'll talk to you on a wonderful Wednesday here on the Russ Joy Show. Bye now.